Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Arwin, Chocolate Saying, no, we're not joined by Chocolate Saying, it's Paul, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good morning, everybody.
Super enthusiastic Discord server. Maybe they're all on mute. Let's have a look. Yeah, they are. It's my bad. Babbling on about sharing the show constantly in the Discord servers. None of them are unmuted. There we go. Hello, welcome one and all.
Oh, hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Good to have you all.
Hello, hello.
Much better, much better. So, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Nope. Not from 24/7 Discord.
Shout out to 24/7 Discord. Subscribe today. So Darren and Ryan, I think both of you need to hover your mute buttons because you're causing all sorts of audio chaos. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No. Earth is stationary. The consequences that would be natural to a motion in an axial variety would be very measurable at all times and noticeable. And there's none of that.
Ryan?
That's not me.
Who is it? Is it Darren? Who knows? We'll figure it out. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth? Darren, can you pop yourself on mute, please?
Can you hear me? Can you?
Can, but you're also causing a load of the audio nastiness.
I'll put on mute. Hang on.
Thank you.
My apologies. My apologies.
It's all right, don't worry. But also do worry a lot. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Nope. No distance. No proof of a proximity. No proof of a physical nature.
It hasn't
Seems more
arrived
like an
here
optical
yet.
effect.
What is it?
It's that big yellowy orange thing in the sky.
Yeah,
It's a light in the sky.
Yeah, that big light comes daily.
You
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
What? Of what?
Any scientific evidence of the reification fallacy that is gravity?
I'm seeing it on screen right now.
The word. We know
Yeah.
the word's real.
Right. No. It's, any
They
displacement.
claim that we have weight.
That's right, we do
Yeah.
have weight, depending on the medium.
There, how do you say this? The way they describe it, there is no evidence at all whatsoever for that. There's just a word that's been misused to mean something that it's not, especially now when they say it's not even a force. So how can you have scientific evidence for a force that's not a force, and they're willing to admit it's not a force?
Yeah,
Well,
so-
maybe John John D. I think he's trying to establish Newtonian gravity scientific evidence.
Oh, he absolutely implicitly understands that he's definitely not trying to form a experiment, Arwin. No. I've been messaging him. No. No, what he's doing is he's setting up a Cavendish. That's what he's actually doing.
Maybe because it's so complex.
It's so complex, did you say?
Yeah.
Hasn't it been out a couple of days now and it still hasn't moved, or a day, at least 24 hours, and hasn't moved?
So it seems. Well, I've asked him if I don't know, because he hasn't released any of this yet. He's still doing it, right? Whether or not he wants to come on and just detail what he's got. Obviously, he's been sending us screenshots, but just looking at the screenshots, it's not immediately apparent what's happening or what's not happening. So obviously, there's the text that he sent along with them to us exclusively. But hopefully, he'll join. Hopefully, he'll tell us about what he's doing, or maybe he'll more likely put it together and get somebody to narrate it.
Was that
When
the
you
Cavendish?
label,
Yes.
go on.
Yes, Neil.
I heard that people go mad trying to do that.
Well, that one guy, I can't remember. It's something Candles is the name of the channel. I can't remember the exact channel name, but a guy's describing. I think the guy's surname is Bowden, and a technician soaring up a Cavendish piece of apparatus because he got frustrated with it not being able to get it to work. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes. They say you wind up wrecking the whole experiment before you see any type of movement.
Well, okay, once we're into the begging the question fallacy that is assuming we've got a force called gravity in this apparatus, which is not an experiment, is observing it by creating an observed phenomena within the apparatus. Once we're into that begging the question fallacy, you've then got their 50 millionth of what the force of a gram would actually give you. Well, that 1 in 50 millionth is a tiny, tiny force. So often people say, well, if you're trying to only measure a 50 millionth of something, how are you ever... Who's making that noise? 10th man, can you pop yourself on mute? So if you've only got a tiny amount, the slightest interference with it would skew the test. So, you know, slightest breeze from a spider crawling along next to it disturbs the air enough to skew that whole test. But the test is bogus to begin with because you're not observing mass attracting mass in nature, and that whole rhetoric is now by the wayside because you've got Einsteinian bending of pseudo-Ramonian force space. So it's not asserted in the same way as it was asserted with Reverend John Michel, CV Boys, Cavendish gravity.
Well, that's the point I was trying to make. They can call it anything they want. We don't observe it. We don't observe mass attracts mass. We don't feel anything pulling our body down as a force whatsoever. I lift my leg to walk. I don't feel something pulling it back. The equilibrium, disequilibrium, relative density. It's just, if the medium you're in, that's the greatest, simplest answer to what is the reason why an apple falls or things like that. But they've called it gravity because they need something to tie to their outer space.
Yes. Agreed.
Right. Yeah, their gravity is all about balls. Well, R-based gravity and all that.
Speaking of they, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Still waiting.
They ain't got shit.
Yeah, we're surrounded by pseudoscientists, pretender clowns.
Right. They don't need it. They don't need the scientific method as long as they just get paid.
I didn't expect you to say that.
They do get paid though.
Exactly.
Yeah, that might be true. Most people in what their endeavours lead them to get paid in some form or another. You know, this is not really that relevant.
Well,
Anyway.
they don't use the scientific method.
I don't know. We all know at a base level because we were all told in 5th grade. We're all taught the same thing.
Not now. They tell you ask a question now.
Yeah, but the method's still described, even with that silly first step, as requiring hypotheses. So it doesn't really necessarily matter which one you reference. Yes, some of them have got some farcical steps, but often we'll review the case study section. In other words, once you've observed a phenomena, you don't just immediately start formulating a hypothesis. We oversimplify it. What if somebody's already done it? You know, what if somebody's already figured it out a long time ago? So you've got, obviously there's going to be a research stage, but you know that's not really relevant to if you've got a phenomena that definitely hasn't got anything already figured out about, which is the assumption when we simplify it to the 3 steps: observe natural phenomena, formulate a hypothesis, perform systematic experimentation. Those 3 steps are oversimplified, but you know you can increase them to 20 steps if you want to. But you just have to descend it into fastity. Ask a question: will I have roast chicken tonight? Well, that's not open to scientific inquiry. Well, why is it the first step then? First step is observe natural phenomena. But, you know, that gets diluted down if you need pseudoscientists to write up the explanation of what science is if they're not using it. So they can just use certain aspects of it. You know, often it's the systematic experimentation stage. Well, we've done this repeatedly. So what?
Well, I mean, I'll push back as a glober. Now, you want to have roast chicken. Could your cravings be considered a natural phenomenon?
Doesn't have anything to do with the chicken dinner that I'm going to be cooking.
Right.
It's not a phenomena.
No.
This isn't a naturally observed phenomena. That's the bottom line, right? Me having roast chicken's not a phenomena.
I know, but your cravings could be. That's what I'm saying. Your cravings, though, of a roast chicken could be a naturally occurring phenomena, couldn't it?
Right, but that's not the same question. That's what's the cause of cravings. Yeah, absolutely open to scientific inquiry, but that wasn't the question I asked. Ask a question: am I going to have roast chicken tonight or not? Yeah, you can skew that into actual science if you try and find a phenomena that's being experienced. But
I'll tell you one.
I guess
that's not the question I asked, though, is it? And my question's not open to scientific inquiry, which makes the first question in Science Buddies, ask a question, seem nonsensical, which it is. Unless you're asking a question about an occurrence that you want to figure out the cause of, that question's irrelevant.
Well, no, you may not have roast chicken tonight because when you go to the store, there's no chickens on the market in the market. So you're not having roast chickens if there's nothing at the market to make roast chickens with.
I mean, for an opener to sort of Jack in the Beanstalk style story, this is wonderful. However, definitely it doesn't have anything to do with science, does it, Paul?
No, not really.
So first step, ask a question, kind of seems silly.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to argue the way Zanuck would argue this. Zanuck would say you're in the wrong reference frame. You need to be the chicken asking, "Am I going to be dinner tonight?"
Well, the fox problem. Anyway.
Wait a minute, I know why the chicken didn't cross the road. He was going to be roast chicken tonight. That's why he didn't cross the road.
This is a Schrodinger's chicken situation.
We move on past this chicken.
I don't eat chicken.
Clearly not.
Get hungry.
Well, that was a nugget of truth.
Moving on.
Oh God! Too
Tumbleweed
soon.
sound effect still lacking. Right, moving on. Any evidence the R value, Earth radius?
Is the Earth radius a circle? How is that circle
Google.
orientated?
It's spherical.
Oh, that kind of radius. Wait, no.
Google has proof.
Google.
Looking at a large body of water right now. It's flat as flat gets.
Nope. R is just assumed.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
There's no way to
Absolutely
test that.
impossible.
Say again, Ryan?
It's absolutely impossible.
I asked a question yesterday, the Globers. Can gravity defy the second law of thermodynamics? I asked that question. If there's any Globers on here, see if you can answer that question or not.
Yes, it can, because it doesn't exist.
Hold on.
Well, for the get.
What?
You talking to me or somebody else on Discord?
I'm talking to Arwin going, what? It can because it doesn't exist? What?
Yeah, if it doesn't exist, then it can violate every law, because it doesn't exist.
It's the other way around.
Think of what you will.
It's definitely, if it doesn't exist, it's definitely not going to be violating anything ever.
Exactly.
Non-existence doesn't violate natural law. Same goes for conceptualization.
Okay.
Go on, Paul.
Well, if basically increase in entropy is free expansion of gases into the available volume, that means gravity would have to defy that, because then it would keep the gases from freely expanding. So it would have to violate increase in entropy. It would have to.
Yes,
so then it would violate the second law.
Correct. It would be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, as we state almost daily. Correct. Also, although I can now say this because Anthony's now at peace with it, you can have your gravity, have your conceptual pseudo-Ramonian force-based bending, and your Newtonian mass-attracting mass at 2,000% strength. You know what's going to happen? It's still not going to overcome entropy.
Well, I mean, and even if you think about it, even if they're using their rhetoric, just the randomness of the gas particles, and if you also kind of throw in quantum mechanics a little bit with the probability issue, eventually all gases, since they have to obey quantum mechanics as well, they would eventually occupy, all the potential probabilities. Eventually, they have to. So again, you're back to square one again.
Timed you out in chat for ad homing me, Rumpus. What are you doing here? We don't need you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, maybe we need a... But I was muted, sorry. Before, now I forgot. Never mind.
I can hear you.
That was a great way to clear the airwaves, to only say nothing, Arwin.
Yeah, I was muted when I first said it, and then the thought broke off when I realized I was muted, so it's just terrible timing.
No worries. Right, we'll have to change the subject. Was there any housekeeping questions left? I think we covered it all, didn't we?
Oh, right, I know the joke again. It's we need an expand into the container movement for gas pressure.
Terrible. Wasn't worth the wait.
I thought so.
Did you do the giant? Did you do the giant gobstopper?
Gobstoppers? Everlasting gobstoppers? Schnozbrew flavoured?
Yeah. The giant gobstopper, the molten iron core.
We did cover the molten iron core. It didn't get a response. It was on screen when I asked.
My bad.
Well, the everlasting Godstopper would also violate the second law of thermodynamics, technically.
That's
right?
correct. That is actually correct, yes. The everlasting gobstopper. Although it's implied that it just lasts a really long time.
I never thought about that. But
If the title of the everlasting gobstopper was true, it would absolutely violate the second law of thermodynamics. It's essentially displaying no entropy, if that's true. Which is a farcical thing to state. So yeah, good point.
I had so much envy of those kids when I was.
What, you wanted to be forced like a bullet through a chocolate tube?
No, the little star gobstoppers.
Here's another one for you. Only that which is immaterial can violate the second law of thermodynamics.
But the second law applies to the physical and natural world, not the immaterial, or the ethereal, or the conceptual. So, yeah, that's right, Paul. It's a natural law. That's right.
Yeah, the natural law doesn't apply to logic, to information, to what else does it not apply to?
Well, information's a good one.
God.
it's a good one. So it doesn't matter about the timing in this regard, but if you just look out, there's a tiger behind you. Does the quality or the amount of it break down with time? No.
You mean someone would say, look out, there's a tiger behind you? I would say he'd be lying.
He'd be lying. Boom, boom. Right, let's do a couple of shout outs. So shout out first and foremost to Flat Earth Fisherman, who's my latest member, joined as a hyena. So thank you very much indeed for joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. You can get the uncut and after show, so the discussion we had about the importance of sharing. Not the most fascinating topic, but there we go. We discussed that in the pre-show today, and whatever we discuss when this live show is over will be available to yourself and any other Nathan Oakley 1980 channel members as soon as the recording is over. So I publish it immediately to the channel members, and then it comes out a couple of days later on the second channel, unless it's a late week show, and then they come out over the weekend. But anyway, also a shout out to Cleary. Thanks again, Flat Earth Fisherman, for joining. Shout out to Cleary, who says, is there a force that will cause you to float away? Thank you for the super chat. Also, shout out to RPJ, who says, what's the matter, Globers? Chicken? Very good.
Let me. I want to anticipate a Glober's response to what we just talked about information. The means by which the material thing that carries the information is subject to the second law, but not the information itself.
I'm stoked we got a fisherman.
Yeah, but it's the information that's the critical bit, because that's supernatural by nature. Therefore, can you apply this natural law? No, it doesn't apply to information. I did hear an attempt to tie information degradation in a way to the second law of thermodynamics, although it wasn't implicitly expressed that way. So on a show we have in the UK, it probably makes its way out to other countries as well, called QI, which stands for quite interesting. And the host described what he called let me get this terminology right, the half-life of facts. And he explained that throughout their show history, if you went back, if they were on, say, letter F at that particular show, or H, that would be more appropriate, half-life. When you went back to the show with A, like all those seasons ago, and looked at how the information that disseminated to the audience was correct or incorrect now, it had a half-life. You could calculate how much the information would be wrong by the time you got to the present. And it was this curve, and you're like, wow. So a lot of the nonsense you spurted out of your mouths on the first show is now just basically flat out wrong. Now, they gave an example, and they said, because they discussed or asked the question about how many moons we had, and the answer at the time was something like 12. And everyone said 1 and got it wrong, and obviously they then give you a load of bullshit made-up story from NASA about how many moons we've got. And then they move on to the present day and say, well, the answer now is something like 5,000. In other words, the information was wrong. Now, I would say that it's the half-life of just so stories, as opposed to the half-life of information. The fact that it's labelled information is a testament to what we receive and is labelled information, right? Here's your news. Well, there's a good chance that 90% of it's total lies, made-up stories, absolutely unjustifiable, to be proven wrong at a later date, however you want to phrase it, right? Now, if you understand that principle, and then you understand that half the time, when you've got these just so stories, they've all got this language that's peppered in the claims, which is the language of science, with words like experiment and words like repeatability and all these sorts of sciencey type words, science itself, with quotes around it. Well, when you figure out that half the stuff they've told you is just a lie or just made up or is to be proven wrong at a later date, you kind of think, well, what is it that you actually have that does give you a genuine, realistic outlook about something? And well, one of the very, very few things that does give you that is science. And that's the very reason why these just so stories with a half-life are peppered with that terminology, because that terminology will lend the credence of empiricism required when you're making up a just so story, because we've all been trained. We all know science is empirical. We were taught it at school, the importance of it. So if you're going to make up stories later to be proven wrong with a half-life, it might be a good idea when you're telling those stories to make them seem as real as possible with these words. Well, we did an experiment. No, you didn't. But it sounds good, doesn't it? And it's convincing. And with those sorts of lies and those sorts of words, we end up on a bloody ball. With people antipodal to us hanging off the bottom of it. With a force that's not a force that you can think of as a force holding them there. That's where you end up with these hijackings of the vernacular of empiricism, science. So, yeah, just so stories have got a half-life, unfortunately, and that's most of what people receive as news and information. So, in that regard, you maybe qualify it with the second law of thermodynamics in terms of the amount of change that it's going to see over time. Anyway.
Well, at one time, they said the sun was 3 million miles away. Now they're saying it's 93 million miles away. So here they are saying we use science and it's 3 million. And now that same science says it's 93 million. So it's pseudoscience.
And the 93 million just comes from the assumption that Venus is the same size as Earth. Christian Huygens gives you the mathematics to land on 93 million mile distance to the sun. It's just an assumption.
Just a quick question. How does a measurement cause something?
You can't. You can't cause things with measurements. Same thing as saying, well, my height causes something. If height, then X. No. That's not a valid independent variable. It's not going to be the cause of anything.
So even if we were to determine that the sun is 93 million miles away, that's still not a scientific question. It's just a measurement.
It's still just maths, yeah. If you could actually, what you're saying is if you physically got a tape measure and ran it out to the sun at the assumed value of Venus being the same R value as Earth with an assumed R value, it's so farcical. Nevertheless, if you were to take that tape measure out of those absurd distances, then you're still just doing maths, just measuring it.
Well, how about the next huge error on their part? The sun is a gaseous object in the middle of a vacuum of space.
Gaseous? It's burning gas.
Rumpus challenging me to our understanding of the rhetoric and how they've come to the actual distances. Yeah, Christian Huygens assuming Venus is the same size as Earth, an application of Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion. Yes, that's how you get those distances. Well, of course, and say I've got it wrong.
No, you.
But ultimately, it's a useful way because he's going to now have me detail how I'm right about his just so story. And hopefully he can come in and beg the question and discuss how his just so story is right or wrong, rather than just highlighting it's all just so story. You haven't got an R value for Earth. Christian Huygens absolutely assumed Venus had the same R value as Earth. We know that we don't have any of these things that you assume. Now, while Rumpus may have got away with saying, yes, we assume R, and that's perfectly acceptable to have this begging the question fallacy as the foundation of my religious belief in a sphere Earth. Now, we say no. Not only will you not beg the question of R, because you just say it's mandatory, we've debunked R. You can't have an R. You don't have a geometric horizon. You don't have this Earth curve geometry with this R value. Al-Biruni did not see that which cannot be seen by your very own words, Rumpus. Hence your total... You're not needed here, Rumpus. All I need is you to talk from shit from the chat, and I can pummel you with your lies. So I don't know why you keep coming back in. I've told you, you're surplus to requirements. Absolutely not needed. While you feel that you might get the opportunity to beg the question here and lie through your back teeth, whoever's not on mute, Ryan, can you go on mute, please? Whoever's Causing audio chaos. It's really irritating. Thank you. Yeah, you don't need any more than him to say, no, you're wrong. No, I'm not wrong. You have absolutely assumed the Earth's a sphere. You admit it yourself. Scaredy cat, hey Rumpus. Is that the best rebuttal while I pummel you? I don't need you here to pummel what you do. Hey, is that Sleeping Warrior? Hey, Sleeping Warrior.
Hey, I just I wanted to join because I saw Rumpus in chat saying you don't seriously believe that assuming the same size as Venus is where they get the distance to the sun from, do you? I wanted to join just to show the audience that NASA cite Christine Huygens as being that authority. Nathan, if you wouldn't mind screen sharing.
Thank you for joining and confirming Rumpus's outright lies. And he's only lying so he can use this as an opportunity to beg the question and discuss the internal bullshit of his Just So story. However, he was not required here for us to pull apart his lie. He said no, in capital O, no. Yes, Rumpus, you're just a liar, hence surplus to requirements. And now we're going to prove you a liar.
So in 1656, Christine Huygens lived... This is, by the way, from... this is a NASA citation using Harvard. It comes from NASA. 1656, Huygens living in Paris had determined the shape of Saturn. I mean, it seems to be a round, ball-y thing. But anyway, and its ring with the aid of a superior telescope and his own analytical skills. Cassini's discovery was that the ring was divided into... Oh, shit. Shouldn't have done that. But Huygens wanted to give the sizes of these objects relative to the size of the Earth. He knew the relative distances of the planets, but in order to convert his angular measurements into Earth diameters, he needed to find the distance from the Earth to the Sun in Earth diameters. Huygens solved this problem with an assumption. Ready, Rumpus? You ready? Paying attention? If Huygens supposed that the planet Venus had the same size as Earth, he could then calculate the distance in Earth diameters from his measurement of its angular size. Then with the Copernican theory, he could calculate for the time of the observation a theoretical distance to the planet in terms of the radius of Earth's orbital cycle. Knowing the same distance in astronomical units and in Earth diameters, he could then calculate the length of an astronomical unit in Earth diameters. He might then repeat the assumption with the calculation for Mars. And then eventually it says, where is it? I'm looking for the bit where he says it's quite ingenious. I might actually have the wrong citation here. But anyway, the point is...
The point is he solved it with an assumption.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Give me a minute, I'll come back to it. This might not be the correct one. There's one literally where it says it. So let me just have another look. It might be this one. No, it must be that one. I'll find it. It is in here somewhere. I'll find it. 2 minutes and I'll come back to you.
It's no worries. There's no pressure on us. Yeah, we've covered this on multiple occasions.
Oh, there it is. Sorry, I did read it. Huygens wanted to give the sizes of these objects relative to the size of the Earth. He knew the relative distances of the planets, but because that's Kepler's third law in interplanetary motion. He knows the relative distances. He's got the scale, right? He knows the relative distance of these planets, but in order to convert his angular measurements into Earth diameters, he needed to find the distance from Earth to the Sun in Earth diameters. Huygens solved this problem with an assumption. If he supposed that the planet Venus had the same size as Earth, he could then calculate the distance in Earth diameters from his measurement of its angular size. Well, if he doesn't suppose that the planet Venus has got the same size as Earth, he has no idea how far any of the planets or the celestial bodies are, and can't then apply that it is, or claim that it is any distance, because he's assuming it's based on Venus being the same size as Earth. Well, if he knows Earth diameter, assuming that Eratosthenes assumed that Earth was a sphere when he did his trigonometry for the distance to the Sun, then, or for his calculation for the circumference of the Earth, well, you're basing your assumption of Venus being the same size as Earth based on his assumption that Earth was a spherical object. Well, don't assume that Venus is the same size as the Earth, and don't assume that Earth is a sphere, and then all of a sudden you've got a totally different solar system in terms of relative distances. So yes, Rumpus, that is the assumption that Huygens made. He did assume that Venus was the same size as Earth. Sorry.
Yeah, but they're more than content because they're nameless, faceless trolls. To now, he's changed his tune now. He's saying, well, that's not the current rhetoric. Well, you just said no, like I was wrong. and now we've demonstrated that you're just a liar. Here to lie, to weasel your way into begging the question, and it's not going to be tolerated anymore, Rumpus. We've had enough of you. Yeah? All you're going to do is lie. So yes, you mean, not a concession, not, oh yeah, it's absolutely documented by NASA that Christian Huygens assumed Venus was the same size as Earth. It's just now not the current rhetoric. So when you said no with lots of O's afterwards, you meant yes, documented by NASA, and you were actually a liar. That's all that we're experiencing with these scumbags. Just outright lies, and Rumpus will more than happily lie to you and say that that's not the case. Well, it was the case. Now, if you're saying it's not current, what, you've got a new Just So story that you need to peddle, do you? Oh, well, not scaredy cat either. We demonstrated you a liar. And what did we get while that was happening? We got him telling us we're scared of him. No, you're scared of us proving you a liar. And that's what's just happened. And now it's capital letters current. Like that was what he was claiming 2.5 minutes ago when he said, no. No, you mean yes. You're just a scumbag who will never concede and are now flapping like a little bird in the chat, which is all you can do. And that's all you'll get to do from now on. Flap in the chat. Lie to the scumbag chat.
Nathan, let me address the current, in capital letters, citation for it. And put me on screen again if you would. This is a citation from NASA talking about how they bounced radar off Venus. And I'll put this in the chat because this is actually a good read. There you go. So anybody that wants to have a read of this, find the heading Venus or Bust. It's about 15-20% of the way down the document while they're talking about fickle Venus. And when you find this document or this heading Venus or Bust, this is referring to the importance of getting a successful ping reflection back from Venus. Because it's basically, they need this for everything that they were dealing with at the time, right? And what I want to show you here is this. Of the 5 runs made, only 4 of the digital recordings had few enough tape blemishes that they could easily be edited and run through the computer. 2 of the 4 runs, 1 from each day, showed no evidence of radar returns. The others had 1 peak each. Price, this is Bob Price. This is the Bob guy that I was referring to yesterday or the day before. Bob recalled, when we saw the peaks, we felt very blessed. This is a bit like Becky, Dr. Becky. She feels very blessed. It was not absolutely clear, however, that these 2 peaks were really echoes. Green, who's the other technician, not scientist, but technician. We looked into our soul about whether we dared to go public with this news. Bob was the only guy who really stayed with it to the end. Bob's at JPL in America. This is being done at Jodrell Bank in England. He had convinced himself, that sounds like a delusion, that he had seen it. And he had convinced me that he had seen it too. Management asked us to have a consult look at our results, and we did. Thomas Gold of Cornell University looked at the peaks and said, yes, I think you should publish this. Green and Price published their findings on the 20th of March, 1959 issue of Science, 13 months after their observations in February 1958. So that is the current position, that they got ping radar reflections, and it was only when it was sent to JPL and other people looked at it and went, yeah, but let's be clear with what the actual position from the English scientists were saying. It was not absolutely clear, however, that the 2 peaks were really echoes. So
just
interpret that however you want and go and cherry pick the sentences out of that whole document.
I've just got a couple of questions. The timings for where they assumed they would get these pings back were based on Christian Huygens' assumption and his distances. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So when Rumpus says that the current measurement, which is this, that measurement is actually based on an assumption made by Christian Huygens in the first instance to give them the timings to assume when they'd get the ping back. So Christian Huygens, again, Rumpus is a liar.
Well, Rumpus is now saying in chat, oh dear, the measurement you are citing was the first measurement of the distance to the sun using radio waves. Since then, have been many more since. Is that not just affirming the consequent, though? Like, so we've got one now, and we'll base all terrestrial claims based on this, and then everybody else does something similar and makes similar claims?
It makes no difference, because the first assumption was that Venus was the same size as Earth. And if you're going to confirm the timings based on Christian Huygens' assumption, then all you're doing is moving forward to validate the first assumption. So unless you've got Venus actually the size of Earth, and all you're doing is basing your timings on that assumption, then you're just, as you put it, affirming the consequent. If Earth is a sphere with a radius of this value, and Venus has the same value, then we will see a return ping time of X. And what do you know? Even though it's cluttered with a load of crap and we can't really determine it, we do get a return time of X. Therefore, we confirm our assumptions. No, that's just a formal logical fallacy as opposed to scientific validity with a measurement of a ping based on Christian Huygens assuming Venus to be the same assumed R value as Earth, as declared by us correctly and obfuscated and lied about by scumbag, liar, rumpus from the chat. Now, there's no need for us to go over and over this with him getting an opportunity to beg the question, obfuscate this point that they've assumed Venus is the same size as Earth. That's the bottom line. It was done by Christian Huygens. It's documented by NASA. They haven't changed that assumption when they've done their ping measurements that they're not exactly clear about until JPL come along and say, oh, yeah. So we know the rhetoric. We know the story. There's no need for you to come here with your lies, Rumpus. When are you going to learn you are now surplus to requirements?
Can I just play devil's advocate for a moment? Imagine that I'm a pro-science, pro-heliocentric narrative scientist in an observatory somewhere else in the world, and I wanted to prove that my observatory was just as good as the Jodrell Bank one because I've had umpteen $1 million of taxpayers from, let's just use the Chinese population as the example. I'm going to now go and reaffirm these statistics by claiming a successful Venus ping because my telescope is fantastic and the Chinese population should be dead proud. So I set it up and I fire it off there and it comes back and all my Chinese scientists all go, do you know what? I'm not quite sure, actually. It looks a bit ambiguous. Are you going to be the scientist that goes, yeah, our telescope doesn't work? No, you're not, of course. No, you're not. You're going to go and say, no, our telescope is fantastic and the Chinese population have proved the distance to Venus, confirming the previous. It's never going to happen. No one's going to ever say, oh, actually, our massive telescope couldn't get it and we couldn't decide, because you're proving your own failure. That's how science insulates itself with peer review, because nobody's going to go against the current rhetoric, especially when there's trillions of dollars of taxpayers' money from whatever country that might be putting into it. They're not going to go against that. They're all going to push the official story. That's how it insulates itself, and that's why we can't challenge it because we're conspiratards. But we work out the logic and say, hang on a sec, you assume that Venus was based on the same size as Earth, and he assumed that Earth had a radius or a circumference measuring this because he assumed that it was a sphere. Well, no one's going to go against that because you're seen as being anti-patriotic if you do, because you're not going to go against your own taxpayers, and that's how it insulates itself. It's nonsense.
Yeah, bottom line is we know what the assumptions are. We're happy to detail them, and when we do, we'll be told that we're lying. And when we point out that, no, that's absolutely how it's documented, we'll be told that's not the current rhetoric. And when we point out that the current rhetoric utilises the same exact assumption, we'll be told that there's new ones that have been made. And so it goes on.
Tell you what would be interesting. If we went back to those guys and said, don't assume that the Earth's got a circumference of whatever, and don't assume that Venus is the same size as Earth, and then look for a ping reflection of Venus and see do you get anything, and you'll get the same cosmic background noise that they got before. Nobody would understand anything, and the conclusion that we would then come to is, yeah, they're just lights in the sky. We don't know what they are.
But we can assume that they can actually send a ping and get a reflection off this thing.
No, I'm assuming that we get the same results back. Nobody understands any of it, and we just say there's lights. You can't get a reflection off a light.
Yep. There we go. There's the full-on nonsense with the assumption of Venus being the same size. That's why it's called our twin. Just because they just assumed it is. That little light in the sky.
It sounds like they peer-reviewed that, though, Anthony. So if it went through the peer review process, you had all these peers. They analyzed the data and they came together and said, this is right. Isn't that the way science works? The peer review process?
Of course. That is how it insulates itself from attack. And then how anybody that dare challenge it, you become a conspiratard. And we're just pointing out, hang on a sec, you're basing it on two assumptions that you have no evidence to support. But you go against the official narrative and you lose your career as a Dr. Beckyist. You become Becky from Witness then. You're not Dr. Becky anymore. You're just Becky from Witness.
Hello,
wherever she's from.
How you doing?
Hey, Nathan.
Hello. I think QE's got mic problems.
Well,
Yo.
Hello.
What's peeping, dogs?
Peeping?
Not a lot, John.
Can I add to what Anthony said?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think QE is familiar with this. Kings Dethroned by Gerard Hickson. Hello?
Go on.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just someone was talking. So on page 3, it's talking about how Hipparchus made an assumption and how everyone who followed him went on that assumption. And it's the mess we're in because of that. It says here, just one little paragraph, if I can read. Such was the extraordinary conclusion arrived at by Hipparchus, and that statement of his lies at the root of astronomy and has led its advocates into an amazing series of blunders from the day to this. The whole future of the science of astronomy was affected by Hipparchus when he said, quote unquote, the heavenly bodies are infinitely distant. It's a great read. Pick up the book.
Cool. Very cool. In a short pause, I'll do a quick plug. So be here or be sphere for Quantum Eraser YouTube channel's presentation live at 7 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Central Standard. And that's tonight if you are watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980. The subject is going to be observed phenomena, correct?
Say that again. You're kind of low for me for some reason. What's up? What's peeping, man?
I don't know. I'm the normal level that I always am. I'm just plugging your show.
Oh, thank you. Yep. It's the last toady toe tag in some clown show with like Pontchartrain, the thing we did before. So
okay. You've also sent a clip. Can I play that out?
Oh yeah, the M. Scott Reach.
Who's causing the echo?
Yeah.
Is it Anthony? Is it you causing that echo, Anthony?
Oh, it might be. Let me have a little look. Apologies.
Speakers are way too
Probably
loud.
is. Usually is.
Of course it is.
Right, I'm going to play out this clip.
Booger eating M. Scott Veach, PhD, 30 June 2020.
So I could do signs on the shoe, right?
Yeah, sure, of course. Of course you could.
Wait a second, what? You could do signs on shoes. Another Brenda supporter, huh? Another signator. Naturally observed phenomena, shoe. Hypothesis, it's a shoe. Eh? You two bozos should get married. Your kids would have hooves.
Of course you could. In fact, people do science on shoes. I mean, you think the when they make, the new Nikes with the gels and stuff, they haven't done science on that? They have.
I just want to know how they go about doing science on the shoe. How you do it?
Same way they
go about
same way they do science on anything.
Same way they do. Same way to do. Same way to do. Booger eating schmuck. My word.
All of that. I know. I just think about the scientific method, because if you're going to use science, you're going to go with the method, right?
Again, not really, but
not really. Okay, cool. Well, never mind.
No.
So you don't use the scientific method when you do science. What do? Pick your boogers.
Well, he said
so
not really.
Let's say we were though.
Away from it though. It's like you keep thinking.
Let's say you were. What do you think the scientific method would need for you though? There.
What do you think the scientific method would need for you though? There makes perfect sense. Goodness, sir, you're a moron.
I don't know. I just know, you need to observe a natural phenomenon, and looking at a shoe, it's not that.
Well, you think it's not natural?
Good Lord, I hope he doesn't think it is. PhD, booger eater, M. Scott Veach. You obviously think a shoe is natural, making you an exclusive member of the 1% Club. The dumbest 1% on the face of the earth.
Anytime you're using something that is going to help you test hypotheses.
Shit, hold on.
It's a shoe.
Yep. The globe does that to people. Makes them come out with completely inane, stupid nonsense.
Well, let me play the devil's advocate like Anthony earlier. Doesn't the shoe have to obey natural law?
You mean, is the shoe subject to entropy? That wouldn't be science either.
Is the shoe subject to natural law? You're being the devil's advocate? That's not the question.
I know, but that's just where the Globers are going to go. They're going to say that since it's natural, it has to obey natural law. Which
unless it's against the model, then they would redefine the natural law with some other form of formula, and that, like they do with atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is the correction for the violation of gas pressure next to a vacuum without a container, right? So they correct it with atmospheric pressure. They redefine natural law and then give you a just so story for their model. That's what they do.
Paul,
For good shoe, you need good cow skin.
Wait a second. The shoe inherently, or if you put it on your foot? Let's get specific.
Yeah, you need good cow skin.
it would have to be in both. Well, one scenario would be slower. Entropy would take slower. On your foot, it would be faster.
Hold on.
No, not with entropy.
Hold on, sorry. Someone from
Drop
Discord.
it.
Hold on, sorry. Someone from Discord said the cow skin is natural. And is that a concrete noun?
No. I said only how shoes it's made, and they're calling that natural.
Yeah, that might be the case. But what I'm saying is, to do science, you need something occurring. So a concrete noun. Let's say that you found a rock shaped like a shoe that was feasibly usable as a shoe. Unlikely, but let's just say that was the case. And it was carved by the ocean, whatever. That's still not a phenomenon, right? It's still just a concrete noun.
I finished school for shoes, Nathan.
Am I offending cobblers?
Are all shoes made of cowhide? Let's get stupid with it.
I finished school for shoes, and it's made me.
Let's get stupid.
Look, okay, I don't mean to offend any of the cobblers' college, right?
Hey, my grandpa was a cobbler.
Nathan, I want to share this with you, if you would. Just screen share, if you would.
Yeah, sure.
I had a really good conversation with a guy called Wardy. He doesn't come in here. He's scared off. He's been told not to come in here. And we were talking about how you can't have gas pressure in a vacuum without a container. We've all seen the container that crumples in the vacuum, right? We've all seen this. I'm assuming that everybody's seen this. As the vacuum increases, after a period of time, it all crumples. Now, I asked him, what's the equal and opposite position? And he said, well, the container, no vacuum and then no crumple. And I said, no, the equal and the opposite position is this. Instead of having the container filled with a vacuum in the pressurized system, you would have the Earth as the equal and opposite. You would have the Earth as a pressurized system and the vacuums outside. But there's no container to have the separation. But he believes that Earth can have pressure next to a vacuum that was significantly stronger. The differential was significantly bigger. He believes that this can exist, but he accepts that can't exist without the container. And I'm saying, well, what's the difference? Because you've got the vacuum on the outside and you've got the pressure on the inside pushing outside. And if you accept that the reason why this contains is because the atmosphere is pushing down on it, because it's the pressure pushing that down on it, it's not vacuum sucking, is it? It's the pressure pushing down. What's the difference? Because you believe that you've got the pressure pushing out into the vacuum of space, but it doesn't actually do it on your model. But in real world, it must do, because that's what we can demonstrate. And he had like a pause. And that was the moment where Wardy died as a baller. And he had to think of an explanation, because that is the equal and opposite position. The vacuum inside the thing gets crushed by the atmosphere pushing it down, not because vacuums suck, because the atmosphere pushes it down. So the equal and the opposite position would be the Earth pushing out into space, but there's no container stopping it from doing it. So why does it not do it? And the answer, of course, is because we're not inside a vacuum, and we must be contained in some way, otherwise there would be no atmosphere. Does anybody dispute this, by the way?
It's
I
not
know
up for,
ballers do, but
it's
the
not up
equal
for
and opposite position.
Not up for discussion. It's natural law.
Yeah, I think it's good. What does it have to do with the shoe?
I didn't want to talk about the shoe.
No, that's a bloody good point, Anthony. As much as, yes, it's nothing to do with the shoe. That therein lies the end of the assertion that we are a ball in a vacuum. We're not. It's a violation of natural law. It's a very good point. Well demonstrated. Thank you.
Yeah, if the atmosphere is pushing on the tanker and it collapses, then why is the atmosphere not pushing out into the vacuum of space? Because it has to be contained, otherwise the same would happen.
It's not a question of why doesn't it. It absolutely must, in line with everything else we observe always.
I could give a baller explanations. Maybe it's because the bouncy balls outside were stronger than the bouncy balls inside the container. So the weight.
You know, when you look at the high altitude balloon footage and you look down onto the Earth, and aside from the fact that it looks beautiful, Dr. Becky, instead of looking at it as gas pressure in a vacuum, the way that we describe it, just imagine that you're looking into a bucket of gas, and all the gas is pooling at the bottom, right? Not because gravity, because we know gravity is not a force, right? It's not doing it because of that reason. It's doing it because there's a gradient, and it's created by the biogeochemical cycle, and that's why it's not immediately evacuating into space. The fact that that exists proves that we must be contained, because in an open system in a vacuum, you would not get any cycles. It would all disperse into space immediately, violently, and just like that container crushes.
Perfect. So once again, another plug for Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. That's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time today for those of you watching live, or 7 p.m. UK time on Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you smashing the super chat. I think there was actually one extra super chat that I didn't read out. Yes, there was. Rakia Life. All my questions are answered except one. What the blank? I'll wait for the answer. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, Rocky Life. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980 Premiering streams. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!